Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pathways to Perform. We hope these real stories from real people resonate to help guide you on your path to perform at your very best in any field. This is your host, Kiesha Lalama. Joining me today is no stranger to the spotlight. She has pretty much worked in every aspect of the performing arts industry, including television and Broadway. She is beautiful inside and out, and what an honor it is to have her here with us today. Please welcome the one and only Stephanie Styles. Hi, Steph. How are you today?
Oh, I'm so happy to be here and to see you and to connect virtually and all the things.
Well, it's so good to see you. I love you so much. I miss you, and I cannot wait to have this conversation with you.
I love and miss you too. And, I try and do my research before I do any of these things. Obviously, I know you. Obviously, I love you. But I was like, I need to listen to the pod before I go on the pod. And it truly makes so much sense because you are, well, I'll start this off by saying, how do we met? How do we know each other? And that would be the 2010 Jimmy
I
Award.
think so. It was 2010. I can't believe that was that
And
long ago.
cuckoo
Hmm.
wild. And you were just this light that I was like drawn to, in that I was like, that person is everything I want to be, everything I will never be but can aim to be, and just gets it. Because I think in this business, it is, for me, the thing that speaks the most to me are the people that are just as personal as they are professional. And you are someone who I think has always been such a great balance of that, in that you pushed all of us to work harder and be better in that 1 week than anyone has. It was the most taste of what it's like to be on Broadway and what doing that caliber of a show is like in our week together at the Jimmys. But at the same time, you were so fun. You were light when you needed to be. You kept us going and inspiring us. And it just like made me want to be better and like hit things sharper. And it just was like, so you interviewing people, I can't think of a better person who gets questions and talks about the industry in such a professional way, because you have such insight to it, but at the same time are so personal, and are someone who I've always wanted to learn from. So I'm excited for everyone to learn from you in this space and format.
You are too kind. First
No,
of all, thank you. You did not have to say that, but thank you. You are so
I
sweet.
feel my truth. So
Well, thank you. I feel you and I had a connection day one. It was very clear. But I think that, and for you, just to reciprocate some of this, you're so professional. You are the most beautiful human inside and out. And it was evident from day one. You have worked so hard to continue to raise your own bar. You want to be better. And by
yeah,
doing that, people can raise you. But unless you want that, unless you want to improve, that's part of the kind of like give and take. But you were willing to go for that ride and took that ride and continue to ride. You're amazing.
I still to this day like remember I was so adamant because you told us to turn our head on hum, and on some people it was like, for some, bump, hum, bump, jump. And I just remember that, like, to this day, like whenever I have to hit something and I'm like, I guess I could hit it sooner, or like, this is messy, we shouldn't call this out, I'm like, no, you got to hit it on the right mark. You've got to, even the littlest things, it's just like, I don't know, that was just a tangent that I thought of. But
No.
yeah, I do think, and I mean, we can talk more about this, but I think for me, so much, both as someone on stage and off stage, I am in the pursuit of being better and trying to learn from anyone I can. And so that's hugely important to me. So it's cool that you recognize that. And I'm here to learn from you today. I'm here to learn from what we have. Like,
I know, it's so good. Well, but it is about lifelong learning. And I think people underestimate how much work goes into the business. I think people think that actors, it's an easy lifestyle. No one realizes the research, the homework, the character development. I mean, sure, memorizing lines and all those things, but there's so much that goes into it behind the scenes, the entire process. It's daunting. It's
it,
absolutely daunting.
and I'm someone who has a BFA in musical theater, And yet recently, a majority of my work has been in film and TV. And as a professional actor post grad, my only training in film and TV has been my one semester of a class I took at Michigan, and then 2 days of an on-camera class I took randomly. That was incredible. Highly suggest. It was Bob Krakauer. It was great. And but that's my only training, as opposed to I've been doing musical theater since started taking classes when I was 4 and did my first show at 6. So I feel like I've had a life of this foundation to where by the time I got to Broadway, I was like, well, obviously I know what upstage and downstage and a box step is, but like there are so many other things that I learned in that experience compared to going on set for the first time of a job that I booked. I was texting every person on my phone who had ever done film and TV because I couldn't even read the like the schedule for today, the sides that they give you, that like, that's, what I was like, the one-liner, I was like, I don't know how to read this. How do I read it? And so I literally had to screenshot it and like send text to people. So you're always learning. And again, we can talk about this later on, but like my last job before COVID was a multicam sitcom, and I had never done one of those before. And there was so much about doing a live performance for the camera that I was learning in that week. And so I love learning, and I love that I can keep on learning. And I think that's just such an aspect about this business. And the fact that I believe, having done shows and worked with people that I've looked up to my whole entire life, I think they are also learning, but at the same time, they are now in the place where they're like, wow, I can teach these people. Like I'm one of the people that is teaching these people. And that's been really cool to see, and see people I look up to showing how they lead by example and just loving how they do it.
That's so beautiful. And I do feel like, it's the circle of life and all those things, but it really is about giving back too. When you have information and you feel like you can help people, you want to do that. And
Yes.
that's so much about what we talked before we started recording, but giving back, and this podcast is reaching people so they can learn, so they can hear stories from people that are going through it, that have done it, that have, like you said, gone from theater to television, and what you've learned from that. And it's little things that you take for granted. How do you read this side? How do you read the call? The call sheet is completely different than a theater email with a call sheet. It's so
Exactly.
different.
Exactly. And I think, and that's something that, every now and then when I have someone in my life who books like their first job like that, or any type of job for the first time where they're going into a world, I will always send them a text being like, hey, you're awesome. You booked. And if you have a weird question that you are embarrassed to ask or don't know where this thing is, feel free to text me, because I had those people that I had to text because I didn't know where something was or who to ask for something. And so I might not have the answer, but if there's anything I can help with, and I'm still learning, but it's like, just to have a community and have people that when you are needing help, that they can help you. And I mean, I think we talk about artists being such a community, and that's true. And it's like, we only help each other. And again, it's a team effort, whether it's just the production or the community as a whole. So if we can just work together, I think those are the best way to be,
Well, and I love that. And we're certainly going to get into it, but we are getting into it, which is great. I think there is a misconception too about competition. It's a different aspect when you enter the professional arena. Everyone is there to complete a much larger, I guess, goal, right? And so you're all working together. No one is there to destroy you. Everyone's there to help. And even in the audition process, it's okay to pick up the phone, call someone, send them a screenshot, help me read this. And I think that's part of the learning process. You realize that people are here to actually help you and support you, and not undermine your goals and your dreams. And I love that you brought that up.
100%. Yeah.
That's interesting. So I think we should start from the beginning. I mean, I don't know that people realize that you started at such a young age. You mentioned your youth and being a child and entering the business. So where did it all begin for you, and how did you kind of get to where you are today?
Well, I obviously was a child of the 90s. Thus, I loved the Disney Renaissance that we had with, I would say, really in part to what Howard Ashman and Alan Menken did with their films, with Beauty and the Beast and Little Mermaid and Aladdin. I think that was, I think they said either in 91, whenever the film came out, that Beauty and the Beast was the best Broadway musical of the year, and it was an animated movie. So I think my generation really got to discover the medium of musical theater at such an early age. So for me and my lifelong love of Disney, I always equate the beginning of my love with those films. But at the same time, my mom and dad's first date was to see Phantom of the Opera on Broadway. And neither of them were born theater people. They just liked theater. They weren't in the biz at the time. And then, so when Phantom of the Opera came to town on tour when I was 4 years old, they were like, this is appropriate for a 4-year-old. And so they took me to Jones Hall in Houston, Texas, and took me to Phantom of the Opera. And I loved it so much that I asked if I could go again, which normally is not the vibe with musical theater. You don't go a few days in a row unless you're me in what wouldn't have that have been 2003 or 4 when I saw Spelling Bee like 3 times in 1 week and Alter Boys. It was a weird phase of my life. But I saw the Phantom of the Opera twice. And the second time Beanie Babies were big at the time. So I brought a Beanie Baby to give to the Phantom. But my mom was like, I don't know how we give this to him. We didn't know about stage doors. We didn't know about anything. So we like found an usher and they got this Beanie Baby. It was a ghost Beanie Baby. And it had a poem attached that said something along the lines of, even though I'm scary on the outside, I'm good on the inside. And the Phantom, the actor who portrayed the Phantom, is an actor named Brad Little. And his dresser found me. Clearly, he was like, there must be only one 4-year-old at Phantom tonight. So find that 4-year-old in the audience.
Aww.
And he invited us backstage after the show. And he spent an hour with me after that show, after that performance of having one of the hardest jobs, both like vocally, but with prosthetics and everything. And I remember like touching the prosthetics, him putting me in the boat, showing me how the mirror worked. And after that, my mom, I believe, had this moment where she was like, you know how you take like swim lessons or whatever lessons I was in at the time? She's like, you can take like this lessons. And so she enrolled me at the Humphrey School of Musical Theater at Theater Under the Stars. And I started when I was 4. I was doing like a Winnie the Pooh play and learning about like Charlie Chaplin at an early, like that was a really exciting thing of that. I was 4 and they were teaching us about like Charlie Chaplin and things like that. But, and then when I was 6, I'd been there for 2 years. They were doing a production of Scrooge at their professional theater, and they were auditioning for the Cratchit Children. And they were like, you can audition. And I auditioned. I sang a patter song from Barnum. And my audition, I remember I had to stand in line with all the other Cratchit Children and do a scene, but my character had no line. So I thought, well, I guess I should just like listen and respond, which is, I guess, acting in a nutshell. And so I did that, and then I got it. And that was my first show. My first show was Scrooge at Theater Under the Stars, starring Gary Beach and Rodney Hicks. It was
Wow. I
amazing.
remember all of this. I love it. I love it.
Great. I'm sure like I remember parts of it a lot, but also I have to play Pill and my mom tells stories, but it was, I remember it was an arena theater. So it was like in the round. And I remember, walking down, it was like carpeted and I have these like of the lights. I remember my first line was, look, Mother Martha's home. And that was like in a little Cockney accent. Like, and it was just, I remember like how obsessed I was with Gary Beach, who was an incredible performer. And it was between Lumiere and Roger Debris, I think. It was between that. So to me, he was like Lumiere, which obviously as a Beauty and the Beast fan, obsessed. So it was just like and Rodney Hicks was being like all 3 ghosts, like past, present, and future. It was a really cool show. And I was really grateful. So since then, I started doing regional theater in Texas and was sort of doing that until I had the opportunity to go on tour when I turned 12 on tour. So I was 11 to 12. And that was an experience. That was my first time, working not in Texas. And from then on, it kind of was a back and forth of doing that, then coming home for a while, then going and doing a show at New York City Opera, and then coming home and going to high school, and then eventually going to Michigan. It's kind of my like youth in the biz.
Well, and it is a different process because a lot of people don't have that journey. They're training and training and training, but they're not granted the gift of actually putting their feet on the stage and performing at such a young age. And so that's great that you had that. And I love that you even go back to the playbills and look up some of these names and remember, I'm interested. You were so clear. You're like, I remember the red carpet and I remember the lights. And, is there a moment throughout this that you knew this was it? As a young performer, did you have that moment, that aha, this is what I want to do with my life? Or was it just a gradual, I don't know anything else?
I would say the moment where I was like, oh, is probably the first times, and there's a few of them that I can remember, like where I made someone laugh, like an audience laugh. And that has kind of been something that has followed me and has been the thing that I find joy in the most, is making people laugh. And being given comedic material that I can try to live up to and or plus in whatever way I can. And that's the stuff I'm drawn to as well. The stuff that just, and who knows, maybe it's because I was 4 years old and someone was like, this is Charlie Chaplin. And like, that's where this was earthed in me. But I think it was definitely that. And then, I got to the point when, we all are going through like, when you're getting ready to go to college, like, what should I do? Which I don't. But even when I went to New York City Opera and I did a show at New York City Opera as a principal living in New York City, there came that point where it was like, okay, do you want to stay here and keep on pursuing this? Or do you want to go back to Houston, Texas and go to high school with all the people that you grew up with? And I chose Houston. I thought that was really important to me. I really was important to me to have that normalcy, and that, I guess what's normal? Both experiences are very normal, but to have that experience was really important to me. And when I was applying to colleges, same thing, in that I think I applied to 2 musical theater programs, and I said, okay, these are the 2 I'm applying to, early action or decision or whatever it was at the time. And if these don't go my way, then I'm probably not going to pursue a degree in musical theater, and I'll get a degree in something else. And if I feel the desire to continue to supplement my education with some outside resources, maybe that's what I'll do. And so that was kind of my plan, is that I always had one foot in that, this is what I want to do, this is what I want, but then also, what do I want as a person? And to me, that was, I really wanted to go to a university where I could get other, be in general education classes with other non-theater people and have that experience. And also, and also go to high school. And that was an experience that I treasure and was really grateful that I had.
And so for your college experience, were there any profound moments that, I'm sure there are many, but was there 1 or 2 defining moments in which really propelled you forward, right?
Yeah.
Like those breakthrough moments. I love those breakthroughs. Did you have something like that throughout your college exploration?
I did, in that I think, you go into this, I went to the University of Michigan, and I've never been surrounded by more talented and inspirational young people other than the Jimmy Awards in my life. And just seeing people discovering their paths while they were there, and then people who really knew who they were, and then just like dug deeper in college. It was really exciting. And I think I went in as someone who had played certain roles, and there were certain roles that I was obviously like, oh, this is where I feel most comfortable. But I also was playing roles, all throughout high school and college, we're playing roles that, you would never play otherwise, because of age differences or just who's there or whatever. And I think that I sometimes felt like, I remember someone telling me that I seemed like this one thing, like a member of my class, and I was like, oh, that's really cool, but I don't know if that's like what I'm good at. And then I sat down we had sophomore evaluations, and I sat down with the head of our department at the time, Brent Wagner, who was someone who I just really, to this day, like I just is like a North Star for me. And I had these moments in my youth where someone I really respected sat me down and said, hey, you're funny. And that needs to be something that you really cultivate and spend time on. And this is going to sound wild, but I think me realizing in college that, okay, this is the time where I obviously work on everything that I am bad at. And this is the one time where I will have these experts and I will be able to have these 4 years to improve on the things I struggle in. While at the same time, this is your time to figure out, everyone has these conversations about type and like all these things. And I don't really think that's the same anymore. I mean, you're nodding, you're like, yes.
Yeah, that's true. That's very, yeah.
And it's about what are these things that are, just you feel drawn towards, or the things that sparks that people are like, hey, whether it's, an aura or a type of like feeling that you broadcast really well, or simply is like, yeah, you have the best arches I've ever seen in my life, or, you're so funny. And those were things that when he said I was funny, I went, I think, and again, not like I'm sitting around being like, ha ha ha, waka waka, like I'm a funny person, like just that I can read material and I can see on a page that this is a joke, this is a joke, this is a joke. And if I say this, almost like if I hit these notes, if I say this in the right way, this will elicit laughter. And so that was the only like sixth sense I've ever had. I don't have great arches and I am not good at reading music naturally. And so it was about working on the stuff that I was bad at, but also being like, okay, comedy, let's research everything we can about comedy. Let's really like dissect it. Let's also think about the big picture. Let's try different things and let's really figure out what that is for you and what is your strongest suit in the comedic sphere.
I mean, the way around it and just kind of getting to it is just your authenticity, right? We keep hearing about that word in collegiate training and higher education training, but be authentic, but that's what you were searching for, was what is special about you. And I'm sorry, but comedy is a skill. There is a talent, a sincere talent. I don't know that it's something you can learn. Your timing can get better, but you're either good at comedy, you either get it, like you said, I can read and I just know that this is a joke and I'm supposed to land this. And if I change this timing or pitch, they'll laugh. That's a gift. Steph, that's a gift.
Well, that's very sweet. And it's something that I just go mad for when I see it in other people. And that's what I love. And I could just watch, I remember one of my last shows. Oh no, it wasn't one of my last shows I saw, but it was like the first show I saw after Kiss Me Kate. I went and saw Beetlejuice, and just seeing Beetlejuice and like seeing those, I don't know why I'm like getting emotional right now. Like seeing like Leslie and Rob McClure and Carrie Butler and Alex Brightman and all of those incredible performers that are just, I'm like, yeah, you are such, and they're so vulnerable and so heartwarming, but they just are so smart when it comes to comedy. And like for me, that show was just and I love Alex Timbers too. Like, and so just all of them working together, whether it was like sleight of hand comedy or, these verbal situations, just the timing, it just was, I just remember being so just obsessed with musical theater that night. And that's what I also loved seeing. And so, and that's just like what I love about musicals. And what was so great about doing Kiss Me Kate was that it was just a celebration of musicals and a special musical comedy and musical romance. And so, yeah, I just love funny people. I love funny people. And maybe that goes back to Beauty and the Beast, where they say Belle is a beauty but a funny girl. See, we can all trace it back. But I
Well,
just,
and those are your influences. That's what you were attracted to. And when you can tap into that, just the early onset of learning about Chaplin and then going through some of the Disney characters and then walking through this process, it all circles back to what you always gravitated towards. And you're aware of it. That's the key, is being aware of your interests and things that you're drawn towards naturally.
like, I am just a collection of moments of discoveries. And I think that whether that's a place of innocence, naivete, and just a new person to a new situation, that's where a lot of my comedy lies. And I think that I didn't know that till way later. And so those are things when I'm working with people, I'm like, I didn't know any of this stuff about myself that I use to my benefit now in college. So, if you can get any head start on just looking at, it doesn't have to be like, I'm really funny, I'm really great at being a dramatic actor, but just these qualities of these characters. If you look at either the songs you sing, the scenes you do, what you're called back as in school, or even just like what feels right to you, try just to find the common threads of that, because Catherine Plummer is nothing like Lois Lane. And yet what is like the common thread there is that those are two people who are thrown into very new environments. And that grant you, that's like a trope in musical theater and that happens all the time. But it's like these people are new to these environments and they're trying to figure out how to exist, whether it's among these newsboys or on a Broadway stage for the first time. So, and Princess Anne and Roman Holiday, a princess who now is living as a normal person in the middle of Italy. So these are all things that I'm like, okay, these are my common threads. So how can I use that to my advantage, and how can I implement what works for me in those to these other roles that I'm either auditioning for or playing one day?
Do you have a dream role?
Um,
I'm kind of wondering about what you want to play, since you're, really kind of thinking about this kind of avenue now.
I mean, I love musical theater, so I'm always down for a revival. Like, I will do revivals. I just love revivals. And so, but also at the same time, I think a lot of the things that I love like something about musical theater that I think obviously you can do in film and TV, but you just don't get to experience it. Because let me start over in saying that, for example, in Vanity Fair, one thing of Vanity Fair or Vogue or something interviewed all of the actresses nominated for Academy Awards that year or something, and said, if you could live out a movie, as what movie would you live out? And everyone had to have different answers. But the only one that was repeated, and was repeated more than once, was Roman Holiday. And that was a show where, you could, it was the idea of the fact that I got to do Roman Holiday and I got to tell that story chronologically every night and experience that feeling of that film, which not a lot of people have gotten to do. It's been Audrey Hepburn and anyone who's been in any incarnation of that, but I got to do it with a building of the Trevi Fountain, with a cannoli filled with whipped cream, on a Vespa behind Drew Gailing. Like, it was one of the most incredible experiences. So doing something like that, I think, would be really exciting, just because I love truly being transported. And I think these shows that are, whether they're old musicals, but especially movies that are involve pastiche, like Down with Love, or I used to do readings of Miss Pettigrew Lives for a Day that they were trying to make into a musical. And those I just found so much fun, because I could be in a world that I can't be a part of. And obviously you can do that in film and TV, but sometimes there's a green screen as opposed to an actual like Trevi Fountain and a Vespa. And so anything like that, I think those are things that really excite me, because I love those time periods and I love a strong aesthetic and and working with really funny people. I just want to work with funny people. And so I would say those are my dreams as of right now.
Your energy is infectious, and it is so refreshing. Just your wide eyes and curiosity, and you love what we do. And
I
it's so you love it. Look at you. You love it.
Well, that's why, I mean, the Jimmys for me and all those experiences were so just like, I'm like, oh my gosh, Mama Rose is talking to Peter Pan and she's talking to Audrey Little Shop of Horrors. And like, for me, it felt like Disney World when you go and meet all the princesses and they interact with each other. I'm just like, the fact that like Sweeney Todd is telling Horton that we all deserve to die, like, or that Horton's telling Sweeney that we're not alone in the universe, like that. I love musical theater, and obviously I love comedy and all these things, but I mean, I would say my least threatening threat is dancing. And that when I see people, like when I saw Newsies for the first time on Broadway and I was watching them, I was like, I love musical theater. And I love that these people can do this. I couldn't do this, but I love that they can. And that's the thing is, and at the same time, my last Broadway show I saw was one of my best friends in Jagged Little Pill. And I left that fundamentally changed as a person. And it's just like everything, whether it's Beetlejuice, Jagged Little Pill, or, Horton and all these people, it's like all of these characters, I just love them. And it goes back to what you were saying. I love what they can teach us. And I love what those performers playing them can teach us. And I also just love spectacle and everything. So just getting to talk to you and geek out about musical theater is really what's your favorite musical? Do you have a favorite musical?
I do. It's West Side Story. But I mean, there's a story there. We were sleeping and my mom woke me up and said, your dad and I are watching this and we think you'll like this. And I remember sitting down on the floor. My 3 siblings were sleeping, just me. They woke me up. It was probably 9 o'clock or something though, right? And I remember my mother made her homemade donuts with apples in them and then popcorn. And I sat there eating these delicious treats alone with my parents in a house that was always filled with so many people. I grew up with my grandparents living with us. My aunt lived with us. It was a family that was just always around, so much love, and sitting there alone, and how special that was with my parents, looking up at the screen, watching this magic. See, I get emotional. I start crying. I've never seen anything like that. And that was it. That was it for me. I knew that this was it. And that's what I wanted. Those dancers, but the storytelling. That's what did it for me. Being able to tell a story through movement and then the love and the music and West Side Story. That's my show. But I'm a fan of Shrek. I like comedy, the producers. I mean, I like it all. I really do. I do. Comedy is, oh God, Mel Brooks, the producers. It's fabulous. It's so brilliant. And Susan Stroman's choreography. I mean, it's just, there's a brilliance and again, a gift when it comes to talent as well. But for me, it's definitely West Side.
And I think what's interesting is that if you were to ask me my 3 favorite musicals, none of them I think are comedies, in that they're Phantom of the Opera, which is, nostalgic because that was like my first musical. And then the ones that I just like, they're so brilliant to me are Sweeney and Cabaret. And those
absolutely,
and obviously have comedic elements in them, but it's just, and I think it's what, just the image of like you sitting with those donuts and that popcorn and just seeing something told on a level, like a story told that you were like, wow, that is a level of storytelling that I have not experienced even in your youth, like as a human being, like just being able to recognize that. And I think that that's what we all see. And it's just a totally uninhabited level that is higher. And I think, some people don't get it, but for the people that do, it is just life-changing and just so amazing and just the greatest.
I mean, I would definitely put Cabaret up there. Those are my top 2. Cabaret. And for me, I think, just the whole underlying history and when it's done right. But again, of course, I'm gravitating towards the dance shows. But Cabaret was the first show that I saw live, and that was it. So it was actually in Pittsburgh. So they did it at the Pittsburgh Playhouse way back in the day, and that was it. I mean, that show blew my mind. And then I got a chance to choreograph it. And ironically enough, it was the first show that I choreographed on a collegiate level and kind of, put me on the map in that arena and my kind of progress through higher ed. But yeah, Cabaret would have been that show is just the storytelling, dancing, and you're right. Some people don't get it, but I don't know another arena in which you can fuse these the artistry, the disciplines together to create one cohesive just message, feeling, all those things. It's yeah, fundamentally changed me, like you said, with Jagged Little Pill, both of those shows, especially Cabaret, fundamentally changed me. Yeah.
And I wonder what you're like a show. I've been in Sweeney 3 times, but a show like Cabaret, being a part of the creative team of something that you obviously respect and love so much. And it's that I think as artists, we always, especially since musicals are an idea that a lot of them are revived and a lot of them we do different productions, different places. And also a lot of them now are movie turned musicals, approaching something both with the wanting to pay respect to what people have done right. And if it's not broke, don't fix it. But also like your take on Cabaret, loving it. Had you like had ideas for how you would do it if you ever had the chance? Or were you like, oh my gosh, okay, what's my Cabaret? What do I pull from like my love and what do I bring my own to it?
So interesting. Fosse is my hero, of course. I'm a dancer, well, not a dancer anymore, but a choreographer. And so wanted to pay homage, and then do it with the Kiesha flair type thing. Right. And I remember just kind of going for it in the style of Fosse with the athleticism of Kiesha. And I'll never forget, because everything back then was really based on reviews, and the director and a mentor of mine was worried about it. And they said, the review mentioned something along the lines of phenomenal choreography. It was like Fosse pyrotechnics. And that was it for me. And I, in that moment, knew that I was going to choreograph forever, and that it gave me the confidence that I needed, I guess, too.
Yeah.
You want to be in this business accepted and loved and embraced and appreciated, all those things. And that was it. I mean, I remember the dean coming up to me, hugging me, and he's like, yeah, it's amazing. And that was it. That was a breakthrough for me. That was huge.
That should be your Instagram byline. Like, fantastic, Fosse pyrotechnics.
Exactly. And the way that, it was Dr. Chris Rawson wrote this. I'll never forget it. He's a dear friend of mine now, but to have that as a young 20 something, trying to prove myself, having the opportunity in the vehicle of Cabaret, of all things, I wanted to do it justice. I wanted to make sure it was done right, all those things. And it just, it lined up for me in so many
That's
ways.
amazing.
Isn't
I wish
that
I
crazy?
could go back in time and see your
It
Cabaret.
was fun. So, we're talking about so many wonderful, successful breakthroughs and wonderful memories. I think more often than not, we probably don't talk about our failures, but we learn so much from them. Is there a moment where, you experienced a great failure where you felt as if you couldn't get back up and keep marching this march?
Often. I think that there are ones that both are bigger and smaller. And I think that, I've done enough interviews now that where people kind of, if anyone who has read enough interviews about me, know my story of the fact that I was so lucky and got Newsies my senior year at Michigan. But that before Newsies, I also had auditioned for a revival of Forum that I ended up getting, but then never happened. And that was supposed to be my Broadway debut. But obviously, I was so excited about Newsies. Newsies was where my focus was. And that Forum would have been after Newsies, like the way it would have just worked out. And but then also, doing Roman Holiday and doing interviews. And I'm already saying this is a pre-Broadway engagement, doing interviews where they were like, what is it going to be like to be on Broadway? So I've had those, and we're talking about like, it's good to be told like, yeah, you're doing the thing and you're doing it well, like that review. That is one thing, but it's also tough when success isn't black and white. black or white, in that you find that like you think like, okay, if I'm doing this bad, then I'll never get a job and no one will ever say I'm good. But if I'm doing this great, then I'm going to get jobs and people are going to say you're amazing. But I was getting jobs and not getting jobs, and I was getting jobs that didn't happen. And so you're like, oh, this is weird. Like, what is this? And so I had big things like that where I just was like, you're an actor. This is what you do. You have to. And I always had little wins in the middle of that where it was like, okay, well, then this reading or this thing. And, you know, when Roman Holiday didn't get a theater, that is when I am not a risk taker, but I made a kind of a risky decision in that I was like, okay, then I guess I'll go to LA and try pilot season. And I went, and I was incredibly lucky in that I got a pilot that didn't get picked up. Another one of these, like, you get the job, but it's not happening.
Yay, but, you know, back then, yep.
You know, I learned so much. Not only did I learn so much during that experience, but it was truly living a dream because it was doing an ABC Disney sitcom where I rehearsed on the Disney lot, being Annalie Ashford's sister.
We're so happy.
It was the greatest thing in the world. And so I was lucky to do it once, you know, let alone like for years on network television. And at the same time, like, so those are those big moments where it's like, you just have to keep on going. But then also there's small moments. We're talking about Pittsburgh. I remember I had a total freak out when I was doing Newsies in Pittsburgh for some reason. And I remember doing Newsies in Pittsburgh. And I guess like I had a show where I was like very nervous. And I just like, when I got to watch what happens, I've never had like my heart beat faster. And I just had all these nerves and I couldn't figure out why. And I just was terrified. I was terrified for a few of the shows in Pittsburgh, and I just got in my head about it. And all I told myself, I was like, your job is to do the show. You need to do the show. Your voice is fine. You mentally are in this weird place with your anxiety and your nerves. And so let's see what happens. Let's watch what happens if we just do this. And I had confided in one of my castmates, and they wrote me a like, you're awesome thing, and left it in my dressing room. And I also just was like, okay, and we're just going to do this number, and all we're going to think about is breathing. And I think that was an element of that song. It's still probably the hardest thing I've ever done to this day is sing that song. And I just was like, okay, you know how to act this song. You're going to act it, but in your head, all you're going to be thinking about is breathing and getting as much breath as you can. And knowing also that, you know, who's really nervous right now too? Catherine Plummer, because she is in a high stakes situation and she doesn't know what she's doing, and use that. So we have these big moments where you're like, oh my gosh, like, am I doing the right thing? And for me in those moments, what I always chose was to just carry on and to ask for help when I needed it, to recognize that, you know, if I made a mistake or if something went wrong, that to not be too hard on myself because I am a perfectionist, but that, you know, it's all, again, the title of EP, it's all about learning. Like, it is about learning and growing. It's not great if you don't grow and if you don't learn, but if you learn and you grow and you carry on. And I don't know if during Kiss Me Kate, I ever had a moment that I was that nervous I don't know if I've been as that nervous ever again.
No, I mean, and thank you for sharing that. I think that a lot of people assume that professionals on stage, it's easy, they show up, they just do the thing and they go home. They don't realize that you do get nervous, even though you've done the show for 6 months, or if you're on tour for 2 years or whatever it is, 8 shows a week on Broadway, however long it is, there are moments where insecurity sets in and you have to find a way to prevail, to work through that. And exactly what you said, okay, Steph, it's your job, let's go, you know, and you have to find a way, but it's not like, you know, just cruising through, right? Just sailing through. It doesn't work like that. Everyone faces, you know, obstacles and uncertainty and certainly struggles, you know.
And it's never one or the other. Because there are days that I just got up and was like,
Yeah, it's
Broadway is
fine.
it
Yeah.
today. We're doing the show. And there are days where my body hurt and I was nervous and and there are days where you're doing great and then you crack and you're like, oh my gosh, I was feeling myself and now I don't know what's left and what's right. And it's just, and that's, it's theater. It's in the moment. It's of the moment. And you just need to take care of yourself inside and out. And also have fun when you can,
I think that's the one for seasoned actors and veterans in the business. And even me, in my early 20s, running and
Yeah.
chasing, people ask all the time, what, any advice or, upon reflection, what would you say? And I'm like, don't forget to have fun. You're working so hard and you're chasing it. And that is a common theme with all of us now in our mid 40s is a little different because you can look back, but to hear you say that now is so important. It's so important to have fun in the process.
Yeah.
Well, and so, just in closing, what you've given so much advice, but if there was a piece of advice that you could give our young listeners that are, dream chasers that are out there that want to do anything, whether it's performing arts or become a doctor or become a lawyer, what kind of advice would you give them?
I think what I always used to say was, work hard and dream big. And I think I still stand by those. I think it is important to dream big. I think it's really important to work hard, whether it's preparation, taking care of yourself, like all of those are very important things. But I think it's just to listen to yourself, to listen to what you need, to listen to what you want, to listen to other people, and to know that everyone is on their own journey. Your journey will not look like anyone else's. And also, when you're working with a group of people, to know that you never know what that person is going through and what their journey is like and what took them to this position. So just, I would say, be kind, dream big, work hard. And what you said, have fun. And just always check in with yourself all the time, both to be like, hey, you're living the dream, and also to be like, hey, are you okay?
Mhm.
All those things.
But you, Miss Thing,
You.
I'm so proud of you. I mean, nothing's changed. This superstar from Broadway to, I mean, just television, a film is everything's coming for you. It's all going to happen for you. It's like what you put out into the universe comes back to you, and you are so beautiful inside and out. And again, you are kind. Everything you're saying, work hard, play hard, all the stuff. I so proud of you. Truly.
And
I'm
I'm thankful for you and for in our little time together when we work together, it has carried with me through everything, and you have been there all the way. And I think that's the impact you have on people, regardless if you've spent your life with them or you just encountered them for an instant. You are one of those human beings that are like a tentpole in people's lives and careers, and that will always, you taught me so much. It's more than you even know. So I'm just grateful for you, and I'm grateful for this platform that you have, that everyone is getting access to it and to you and your brilliance. And now you just need to write several books. So
you're so sweet.
next, you have time.
Thank you. I do.
This
Well,
summer.
my girl, I love you. Let's keep in touch.
Love
Lots
you
more.
too.
I'll have you back on the show. We're going to be doing a couple different segments, and you just have so much to offer. So I'd love to have you back. That'd be great.
Of course. You're awesome.
Please take care of yourself. Yes, take care of yourself. Enjoy and do whatever you can to, keep growing. I love you.